need to be completely honest with you about my world travels. Americans are leaving the United States. Should we be worried? The short answer is yes, very worried. And here's why. Approximately 1.6 million Americans are now living in Mexico. This is the State Department, the U.S. State Department's estimate. But I'm here to tell you that there's a lot more than 1.6 million. If you don't qualify for a temporary residency, you are required to leave the country every 6 months. Now, back in the day, when I first moved to Mexico, we could leave every 6 months and come back the next day, or in some cases the same day. But since then, Mexico has transferred over into a electronic system. And if you notice, when you go in, when you are at immigrations at the airport, now they take your passport and they put your number into the computer. So the computer gives them information on when was the last time you were there and how long you were there and when you left. So being able to go out of Mexico and come right back in is getting harder and harder. Now, here's the thing that I have not been honest with my viewers on this channel, completely honest with you about. I don't think it's best for us as American citizens to leave our country and go and apply to live in another country. Now, I know you're saying, well, what the hell are you saying? You've been gone for 12 years. Yes. And I have not been back to the United States for long periods of time in that 12 years. But I have never, ever signed my name on a piece of paper that ties me to having another country as my home country. The U.S. has always remained my number one qualified citizenship country. Now, I'm going to give you some of my understanding of why I think it's a bad idea for so many of you, especially if you are not yet retired, to leave the United States, not only physically, but on paper as well. If you've been watching my channel for any time, you know that I always encourage you to keep a U.S. mailing address and to have your Social Security, your retirement income, pensions, etc., placed into a U.S. bank. And then you use your ATM card to get your monies out from the banking system wherever you are in the world. Now, the reason why I am cautioning so many of you on signing your name and tying yourself to another country other than your own is because behind the curtains, things are happening. First of all, the cartel is being upset in a major, major way in Mexico. And this automatically means that some parts of Mexico are becoming less stable and less safe. Now, when you take the food and the money away from individuals, like the U.S. is doing with the cartel, you can expect that they are going to retaliate and respond. Hunger has that way of doing that to you. So when this happens, sooner or later, when the U.S. continues to pressure the cartel situation, they may decide that you, a U.S. citizen, are their best out. Now, I don't want to be negative. I don't want to create any issues, but I want you to be aware that this situation is simmering on the back burner. It's not going away. It's simmering. Now, first of all, if you live in Mexico, then you know before this latest administration got in that many, many young men out of different families, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of families in Mexico had at least one or two family members in America who worked and who sent money back to the family each and every month. If you have lived in Mexico for any time, you have noticed that on the last day of the month and the first of the month, the lines at the banks are unbelievable. And you know to avoid the banks during these times. You know that. Well, since the deportation of so many Mexican people who are living in America and sending money back, this pattern has been broken. And that means that when they are returned to Mexico or whatever countries they're returning them to, they need to find work. So employment becomes a situation. Now, they have increased the salaries in Mexico, and that's why it's harder to qualify financially to live in Mexico, because they have increased the minimum wage. And this is a good thing for the locals. But here's the bottom line, the truth for U.S. citizens. The moment that you sign your name on a piece of paper associating you with living in another country, you could lose benefits, upcoming benefits in America. Now, if you remember back to the virus, when the virus really got out of hand and U.S. Treasury was sending out checks, the current president was in office at that time. And I don't know if you remember this, but he tried to stop payments to people who were married to Mexican citizens or citizens outside of the United States. Now, many of you may not remember this because him wanting to do that was beaten down by critics, and it was proven to be an unconstitutional act. So they didn't do that. However, they wanted to. And that's what you have to keep in mind, that when things get tough and you've got a $39 trillion deficit, U.S. deficit, you don't know what their new laws will look like. And you don't understand that they could very easily leave you out of situations, benefits that may be coming in the future country. Now, I have an advantage to understand this information. I was an independent contractor for the U.S. Department of Treasury, a tax professional for over 25 years. I have a lot of experience with the federal government and their new policies and new tax laws, new codes every year. I have watched and seen what they have done, above board and below board. Now, here's the situation that I want to share with you. I want my channel to grow. And I know it hasn't grown because I haven't put my all into it. And I haven't put my all into it because I have not been 100% honest with you. I haven't lied to you, but I haven't been 100% honest. Now, I am the first woman of color to graduate from DeVry. It was DeVry Institute of Technology back in the day. Now it's DeVry University. I only say that to let you know that I have a computer electronic background. Now, here's what I want you to understand. AI has raped all of us to become the smartest system in the world. It has raped all of us. If you ever put anything online, it got it. Therefore, when all of the different jobs throughout the United States are lost and unemployment runs out, which is happening right now, the U.S. government is going to need to step in. And this has been discussed. This is no secret. If you Google it, if you research it, you will come to understand that the words universal income is not new. It's real. And the U.S. is preparing for this. But what do you think will happen when it's time to cut the checks for universal income if they have evidence, documented evidence that you are associated with living in or being a resident of another country. You see what I'm trying to get you to? I only told you about DeVry because the internet has been with me ever since I was a young woman. A young woman, 18 years old. So therefore, I have a real sense of understanding of what's going on in the internet world. And this AI taking over the jobs, that's real, people. I know that many of you are not able to live your best life in the United States. I left for the same reason. Not because of politics, not because of who's president, or what's happening here, or the organized patterns or systems against people of color. I didn't leave for those reasons. I left because if I stayed in the United States while retired, I was going to have to live in poverty. I didn't want to do that, especially when I could take my little $1,000 a month retirement and go to Mexico and overlook the Bay of Banderas. For the first 5 years, that's what I did. And every 6 months, I'd travel, leave the country and come back. Until one day, the rents, they didn't double, people. They tripled in Puerto Vallarta, where I was living in Mismaloya, a little small fishing village. But it's only about 7 miles outside of Puerto Vallarta, and the bus runs every 10, 15 minutes up until 11 p.m. And you couldn't even get on the 11 p.m. bus because everybody was trying to get on the last bus to go back down the peninsula where we all lived in Boca de Tamalan and Mismaloya. So I was sitting there, I was in the midst of when all of these people started retiring, and they started showing up at the Puerto Vallarta International Airport with no return ticket. They were staying. And the locals in Mexico, they understood right away, oh, raise the rent. And that's what they did. I always knew that I was going to have to keep going further south to get cheaper rent and still be able to overlook the ocean or the sea. I first ended up Mexico City for a moment and then into Acapulco. Now, Acapulco didn't scare me because, as you know, I said I went to DeVry. I went to the DeVry campus in Chicago, and my relatives lived on the south side of Chicago. So I wasn't frightened of Acapulco. I had lived in South Chicago. So Acapulco was like home to me, and that was right for me. It was good for me. But there were some scary moments because the pandemic happened right after I'd gotten there. And I kept saying to my landlord, who was he was the son of a famous surgeon in Acapulco, I said, are they going to attack me and take my money if they see me going to the bank or the grocery store because they won't have money? He started laughing at me. I never forget trying to figure out, well, what the hell are you laughing at? And when he explained it, I understood. I laughed too. The Mexican people, they live like 3 generations in one household. And maybe 1 or 2 of the family members are in America, and they're sending money back every month. And everybody in the family pools their money. So basically, each household had way more money than I did. So they weren't interested in my little few pennies. They had money for food and everything else because they're family oriented. The core is the family. And you've got 3 or 4 people working of a generation of 3 generations in the household. Everybody's got food and everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's got shoes, and everybody that can has a job. So the pandemic, except for people dying, wasn't a big deal in Acapulco. Yes, it was a big deal that people were dying, but the loss of all the jobs because they shut down the tourist industry in Acapulco during the pandemic. I stayed there for a year. I couldn't get out. I'd make an appointment I scheduled my flight from Acapulco to Mexico City, but I couldn't then schedule a flight to catch a flight back to America. Or I couldn't get out of Acapulco City, but the flight from Mexico City was going to San Francisco. So I just gave up trying because I was paying money online for these airline tickets, and I wasn't getting the money back quick enough to book another flight. So I just stayed where I was. And that's how Acapulco became my second home, so to speak. But I never ever signed any papers, and they didn't bother me when it was time to leave, because I said, I've been here because of the pandemic. I couldn't get out. And they said, okay, no problem. So, but this is what you may want to understand. Those of us who are slow traveling and not attaching ourselves to any other country, we do it because we can do it because we only go from one country to another that is close in proximity. The airfare in Central and South America is much, much cheaper than the airfare in the United States. And the airfare from Miami to the Caribbean is very affordable because you catch the right airlines. You don't catch the major airlines, you catch the airlines that service the people. But you also check on their history, their maintenance history, to be sure that they are a safe airline. We can stay in countries like Albania and Georgia for 1 year. I am now in Georgia. I will be here several more months, and I will be cruising back to North America. I stayed in the Dominican Republic for 1 year. Of course, I had to pay a hefty exit fee tax to leave. But the Dominican Republic doesn't care how long you stay, as long as you have the money to pay to get out. And I knew this to be true because it's on the country's website. They are cracking down more. They want you to only stay 90 days, but I don't think they care because they have a set up procedure when you're leaving if you have overstayed. You can stay in Mexico for up to 6 months. You can stay in Colombia 90 days, Brazil 90 days, Peru 90 days, going to Ecuador at the end of the year for what? 90 days, you got it. Europe 90 days. I have traveled to Eurasia, Turkey 90 days, Bahamas 8 months, Jamaica 90 days. Tired of traveling? Purchase a plane ticket to Puerto Rico. You can stay as long as you like. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. If you get tired of traveling around Asia, you can check into Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands, U.S. territories. Stay as long as you want. No visa, no questions, no problems. The American Samoan Islands, no visa, no question, no problems. These are U.S. territories. And there is no expiration date for when you have to leave. So if you get tired of traveling or you just need to rest, you can check into any of these U.S. territories and put your feet up and stay as long as you need to stay. Now, the top granddaddy of all the U.S. territories, in my opinion, is the U.S. Virgin Islands. But I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't cheap. The U.S. Virgin Islands is beautiful, but they maintain a high quality of everything because it's expensive to be there. My advice is to go ahead and pay the high rent for 1 month or 2 months and look around the island for affordable accommodation. Build up yourself a nice apartment. Add on to it. Do what you need to do. The landlord usually will let you do this because he knows when you leave, you have to leave all of the upgrades that you did to the property. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, I'm talking to everyone. I don't care what color you are. because Black Americans, African Americans are experiencing the same issues that everyone else is experiencing around the world. Black Americans are leaving Africa as quickly as they get there because they are finding out that things are not what they thought it was going to be. I'm not saying that you want to do what I'm doing. It takes a certain kind of attitude to pick up and move every 90 days. In some cases, 30 days. But I enjoy that. That's what I look forward to. Staying healthy and staying able, mobile. That's what I look forward to. Moving away, going to another country in 90 days, and going back to the same countries. I circle around. Yes, I have favorite places. Dominican Republic was one. Puerto Rico is going to become one of my favorite places. Acapulco, definitely. Costa Rica, I did Costa Rica. Colombia, Peru, 90 days, well, it was really 4 months. I had to overstay in Peru because I got a medical situation, and I was very frightened when I went to immigration to depart Peru. But they too, all they asked for was money. They wanted money for me to be able to board my flight. And I gave them money because it said on their website, the country's website, how much money they would want and that they wanted it in cash. And I had it with me and I gave it to them and they let me out of their country. My lifestyle is not for everyone. And I'm not trying to push that off on anyone, but I am trying to make Americans, U.S. citizens aware of the possibilities when you sign your name or when you become affiliated legally with another country. Over and out in Georgia, the country, not the state. Look at some of my other videos to learn about Georgia. It is a beautiful place to set up your retirement. It's beautiful. Yeah, it used to be Russia, but the quality of life here is very, very high. The cost of living is very, very low, and it is gorgeous.